I have a feeling this is going to be like an intimate conversation. This is so beautiful. Okay, let me give you a brief about what I do. Basically, I've been researching for the past like 20 years, and in natural health and alternative medicine, and a lot of alternatives to current medications. I've spoken on so many medias around over the past 10 years, and 2 years ago, I started putting information on YouTube. And since then, it's so interesting because it's almost like we're conducting public experiments together with people. Like I experiment myself, then my friends start to experiment, and then I put it on YouTube, and people start to experiment voluntarily, of course, with proper disclaimers, and we get feedback. And so what's happening is so interesting. Now we have millions of views and a lot of people who are following up. And I did a video about your research recently. It gained so much popularity, and I've been experimenting with NMN and resveratrol, and of course, I've read your book twice, and I followed your work, and there's so much. I'm actually experimenting with something that might strike your interest. I tested NMN and resveratrol first, and then in large quantities to see what happens. Then I went back to the proper dose. Then I tested doing it in liposome. Like I got NMN powder and resveratrol powder, and I put some sunflower lecithin, and I broke it with ultrasonic waves.
Yes.
And I was able to get way better results with that, even with a smaller dose, because of the absorbability in this case.
What do you mean by results?
That's the interesting part. So when I first tried NMN and resveratrol, I started with a low dose, and then I started to increase it in the powder form. I started with a low dose, and then I started to increase it gradually, and then I really increased it to a very high dose to see what happens. So, like not very, very high, but like 2 grams each, twice a day. That was a high. This is a high dose, right?
Yeah, right. That's 4 times what I take. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very high dose. When I did that, I actually got extreme like pressure in the head, and at one night, like 2 days into that experiment, my nose started bleeding out of nowhere. So I knew it. Yeah, I knew it was time to stop.
It thinned your blood, probably.
Yeah, so I stopped that immediately, and I went back to the normal dose, which was like 0.5 gram each every day. I take it with MCT oil, because I'm assuming it's fat soluble, so I have to do that. And then I stopped taking the powder form, and I started taking the liposome form, which I did the way I told you. And since this first day, I think I'm noticing like increased activity. I didn't notice that with the powder form. I noticed increased activity with the liposome form. And then my friends started to asking to get some, and I gave some to my friends, and they started experimenting with it, and they're experiencing similar results, along with like I don't know how to, like facial, like the skin of the face is also more vibrant and it looks better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm seeing results with the liposome form, and
well, you know that I have my poor man's version, which is my yogurt.
Yeah.
I actually was just eating it when you called. Yeah, let me show you something.
Yeah.
So this is how I have my 2 spoonfuls of yogurt every day. I just finished it.
Beautiful.
You know, you can still see.
Yeah.
In there. And then I'm still having my coffee with NMN. So I show you that only because, you know, a lot of people just say what they think is right, or even they lie. Yeah. Whereas, you know, you and I are really living it. And what we say we're doing, we're very accurate and truthful about what we're doing.
Yeah.
I could say, I take NMN and yogurt every day, and then maybe eat it once a week, and I'm just lying. But now that you've seen, this is my breakfast.
Yeah.
With you today. Anyway, so I take 4 of these. That's the NMN, and the resveratrol was dissolved in this. Mm-hmm. So this is water soluble. This is not. So the liposomes are for what? Both molecules or just one?
For both molecules, I'm putting like maybe 4 grams each, NMN and resveratrol, with about, let's say, 20 grams of sunflower lecithin. I dissolve it in maybe 100 ml of water, and then I break it in an ultrasonic machine, which I actually built myself. So I like to experiment. It's my thing. So
the ratio of sunflower lecithin in water is what?
like 4 grams with 20 grams of sunflower lecithin in 100 ml of water, approximately. It's not accurate. I didn't base it on anything. I thought that would be a proper ratio. And I honestly, I use 5 drops of that 3 times a day, and I'm experiencing results. Mm-hmm. But when I took the powder, I didn't really experience anything significant. I wasn't sure of the results.
Well, did you use resveratrol in anything, or you just ate the powder resveratrol?
With the liposome, or when I first experimented with it?
When you first had the powder with resveratrol, did you mix it with anything?
MCT oil. I took it with MCT oil capsules. Oh. Okay. Yeah, because I'm basically vegan, so I didn't use the yogurt. I just used. I reasoned that MCT oil should do the trick.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Mm-hmm. It's worth pointing out that the things that I'm talking about today haven't been proven to work in humans, right? We're talking about anecdotal evidence. But there is a lot of evidence in animal studies so far, mostly mouse studies.
Yeah.
And, the skeptics would say mice don't prove anything. And it's true, they don't prove anything. But they are some guide. If something fails in a mouse, it's probably going to fail in a human. If it works in a mouse, it has a chance to work in a human. That's usually the rule. And so, we've been doing human studies more recently on NAD boosters, a relative of NMN. It's called MIB626. And it is, there's no safety issue so far. And, but it's not a huge dose like you were taking. People have to be very careful, I think, with these substances, right? Because they haven't been tested rigorously. That's the warning. I don't want to come across as, scientists saying we should all be testing things in our bodies, because you have to be not just careful, but you have to, like you and me, monitor our bodies to make sure that we're not doing any harm, or seemingly not doing any harm. So unless you're working with a doctor and having blood tests. So tomorrow I'm going to have a blood test to see how things are going. Yeah. And, if I did see changes in liver enzymes, which might show some toxicity, I would immediately stop. But so far I haven't seen any issues.
Makes perfect sense, of course. Yeah. I've done some very interesting things over the past. It seems like unintentionally I've activated 2 of the 3 aging pathways. I'll deactivate it, let's say. So basically I eat 0 sugars and 0 carbs, and completely no carbs, nothing that raises the blood sugar in any way. As in if I eat 1 piece of cashew, I would feel it for the next 3 days. So I'm completely I'm fueled completely by fat, seeds and nuts. I'm vegan, so I'm like a vegan keto guy. Don't ask me how it's going, but I eat 0 carbs, nothing that raises blood sugar in any way, and I've been doing this for the past 7 years.
And you have a patch, you monitor yourself, so you know?
Interesting thing is that I have 5.5% body fat, and I play sports every day, martial arts. I'm very active, and my blood sugar in the morning is around 85 to 90. So, and I've been doing this for the past 7 years. So this proves everything you're doing experimentally, I suppose. So I'm activating the aging pathways, the insulin pathway and the mTOR pathway. I'm deactivating them. I don't know. It's just this is what experimentation took me. This is the path. I didn't read it in any book. This is just how I felt comfortable going through the years, and this is what I ended up with.
Right. Well, it's an interesting diet. Because carnivorism, I'm not convinced is healthy in the long run. It'll help you build muscle, of course, but there's no experiments that I've seen that say eating a lot of meat is long-term beneficial. And also, like you said, if you eat carbs, I don't like carbs at all. I think based on the evidence that keeping blood sugar steady and low is good, as long as you don't feel affected in your daily life or faint. And I've actually gone to get one of these glucose monitors that you stick in your arm, and it shocked me what the foods I was eating did to my blood sugar. Just a few bites of sushi with rice shot it through the roof.
Absolutely.
And then I also found that my body produces sugar in the morning naturally, and I don't need breakfast. I'm totally fine. And in fact, if I eat a big breakfast, I feel sick, and it's probably because my body is an early glucose producer. Some people are different. Some people feel faint in the morning. They need food to get going, and sometimes they're doing a big workout, which I cannot do in the morning. So the point here is everybody is different, and you need to pay attention to your body and work with it.
I seriously came to the conclusion that sugar acts like a drug, but once you stop that gradually and wisely, of course, your body gets accustomed to taking its energy from fat, which we call keto. And then if I can't eat onions anymore, I can't eat carrots anymore, because once I eat it, I'm bothered by it. It's like my body switches back to taking simple glucose, and it doesn't want that. It's happy taking it from flax seeds and nuts and veggies and seaweeds and like similar stuff. And that's another question. You are an advocate of metformin because you're seeing a lot of benefits from using it, health-wise and considering aging as well, right? My question is, why don't we just stop eating sugar and starch and get these results naturally instead of blocking glucose absorption with metformin?
Well, I'm not an advocate. I don't advocate or recommend anything. But I do speak about the science, and I've read many papers on this topic. There are two main points. One is that it's always better to do it naturally than to take a molecule or a drug, a supplement drug. So you're right about that. But where I think it's important to discuss is the point that metformin seems to do more than just lower blood sugar. We don't know how metformin works. It seems to work both on the muscle, on the fat, and even on the microbiome. So it's quite possible that just keeping low glucose isn't sufficient to mimic metformin. I don't know if the kind of diet you're taking, if it was tested on 100,000 people, would also, like metformin, reduce cancer, heart disease, frailty, and Alzheimer's. So, I'm always driven by the data, and 100,000 people in a publication will always override logic and anecdote.
I get it.
So we showed way back in the early 2000s that these plant molecules do activate the same pathways, many of the same pathways as fasting and exercise. And that was a revelation. That was surprising to people. Now we take it for granted that you can trigger fasting without fasting using molecules from plants. So I do believe that if I take, or when I take resveratrol in the morning, it will activate SIRT1. And SIRT1, we've actually shown, at least in mice, that SIRT1 is actively promoting blood vessel growth and mitochondrial function, just like fasting and exercise would do. I try to do both because it looks like they're additive. If we give resveratrol to mice that only eat every second day, those are the ones that live the longest. So combining fasting and or exercise with these molecules, I think, is the best solution. I think of the longevity pathways as a piano, and you can't just smash one key or smash with your fist and hope it plays beautiful music. You want to play the symphony, and we don't know what the symphony is yet. It's still early days. We were all born one generation too early for us to know this for a fact, and that's why I'm willing to talk about it because I think that at a minimum we can have millions of people live healthier lives based on the science right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's a possibility that this could be similar to taking a shortcut? As in, for example, when someone lifts weights and takes a steroid, can it be similar to that? Like taking steroids is very bad on the long run. It's like taking a shortcut. So is there, I don't, I don't want to say I don't think so because this is just based on logic, but do you think that there might be a similar effect, like it's a shortcut instead of doing the real deal?
No. The main reason is that you mentioned bodybuilding and say taking growth hormone or testosterone.
Yeah.
So the body has two states. There's the body building and then the body protection. Okay.
Right.
And usually you can't do both. And we're seeing that if you take metformin or you take resveratrol, there are slight reductions in your responses to endurance exercise and in weightlifting. Okay, so it's not the same. But I'm trying to get both. Okay, so I lift weights, even though you probably can't tell. It's only once a week, and I take the molecules that I think are mimicking adversity, so the body turns on its longevity defenses. And that way, I think I'm not losing body mass, and I'm doing a lot of hip hinge exercises to make sure I'm not going to fall over when I get older. But I'm also taking these molecules that will tell my body that times are tough.
Yeah.
And so that they seem to they don't work beautifully well together. The bodybuilding and then the body protection. That's the one downside, and it's actually something we haven't figured out yet fully. And so one of the solutions that I've proposed, its potential solution, is to, when you want to build up muscle mass, you don't take metformin on those days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go for a run, don't take resveratrol the day before and during. Now, that works for me because I don't run more than once a week or twice a week. But what about athletes? What do they do? That's a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope it's not true, but it might be that an athlete cannot get the benefits that people who take these molecules and run less frequently get. It's a choice. Maybe athlete longevity, incompatible. And I mean an athlete that's lifting weights. I don't mean someone who does it, well thought out exercise.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the longevity of bodybuilders, but my suspicion is it's not great.
Very interesting. Okay, so obviously, I'm not afraid of this, or else I wouldn't be taking it. But what do you think about the research that suggests these molecules can accelerate cancer and similar diseases?
Well, so the scientist answer is we don't know. But let me tell you what we do know. We know that from my lab, in 2 mouse models of cancer, one was breast cancer, one was liver cancer.
Yeah.
And this was done in the lab that's co-run by Lindsay Wu down at Sydney, that NMN did not accelerate any cancer in those 2 models. In fact, in the breast cancer model, it actually slowed the growth of cancer.
Okay.
So in my hands, we haven't seen any evidence for it. We've fed NMN to mice for many, many months. I think, actually, we fed it for the whole lifespan, and there was no increased spontaneous cancer. Yeah. Okay. So where does this idea come from? There are 2 reasons to question the possibility of cancer. Again, they're in mice. So one comes from a study that we showed that NMN boosts blood vessel formation.
Okay.
So we didn't look in cancer, but we looked in muscle. And when you give NMN to a mouse, an old mouse, it will have more blood vessels, and it will have better blood flow. And we also published with another group that the brain gets better blood flow as well.
Okay.
Which is all good for aging. It may not be good for cancer. If you have a big tumor that needs blood flow, I would be cautious, very cautious actually, that NMN or maybe resveratrol, I'm not sure about resveratrol, it hasn't been studied. But so that's one concern. If I had a big tumor, I probably wouldn't take NMN just to be safe.
Okay.
And then the second thing was there was a study that came out of Washington University in St. Louis. And what they showed in this study was that if you took a brain cancer cell line and you knocked down NAD levels, so you got rid of the enzyme that makes NAD. Okay. Now those cells didn't grow very well, and they didn't make, it was a glioblastoma in the brain. Okay?
Okay.
All right, so what does that prove? Well, it proves that cells need NAD to survive, to grow well. We knew that 100 years ago. That's not a surprise.
Yeah.
But the experiment that they needed to do was to increase NAD and show if that causes cancer, which they didn't show. They didn't test that.
Yeah.
And what happened was the publicity department at the university wrote a press release that says that this work shows that NAD can cause cancer, which is not what they showed. And it went all over the internet, unfortunately, which is a misinterpretation of that data.
Good to know.
Right. So basically, in simple language, if you take 4 wheels off a car, it won't drive. But if you put 6 wheels on a car, will it go 6 times faster? No. Well, or, put 8 wheels on a car, will it go twice as fast? No, it won't. So you cannot interpret an experiment that goes one direction and say, oh, if you do the opposite will happen. Yeah. So that's why I continue to take NMN. I haven't seen anything that concerns me. If I did, I'm not crazy. I would stop immediately and tell the world that I've stopped taking it. And my father as well. I certainly wouldn't want my father to harm himself at age 80. And then there's the clinical trials. We've been doing safety studies with NAD boosting molecules. Other labs, probably 4 other labs, have done this in humans and not seen anything yet. But, again, I'm a scientist, so I would say we need long-term studies. We need to test for 5 years and look at thousands of people, and that would tell us if there's a worry.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, that explains it. Okay, my last question. I definitely did not hesitate to try NMN and NR and resveratrol because NMN and NR, they are derivatives of vitamin B3. So there wasn't like a big risk thinking in that direction. But I have to say, when I think about the possibilities of engineering viruses, I freak out, which is an ongoing research and much to come in regards to that. So am I allowed to ask about this? It's kind of a scary idea and like consequences that might come with that. Yeah, I would love your input about this.
Oh, you mean bioweapons, an adverse?
Yeah, that's taking it to the extreme. But also about the consequences on long term, injecting ourselves with genetically modified viruses, similar stuff.
Yeah, right. Well, that's going into territory that I think is too risky. We don't know a lot even about AAV, the adeno-associated viruses, which are used by some companies to treat eye disorders and sickle cell anemia.
Yeah,
but we really don't know the very long-term safety. The virus looks like it might integrate into the genome. It could theoretically disrupt a gene that could lead to cancer. The FDA has looked at this and they've said it looks safe, and they've of course approved products. But those are in diseases where patients have no other choice. They're blind or going blind, or dying young. For someone who's healthy and young to middle-aged, in my opinion, the risk is too high because there's still another 50 years to go at least.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of that kind of self-experimentation. I know it's been done. Speaking of viruses, we have work on gene therapy to reset the age of cells. We have a publication that's available online on bioRxiv that shows you, and it's in the book as well. You've read the book, that shows that we can truly reset the age of cells and they function again. So we can restore the eyesight of an old mouse that's lost its vision or has glaucoma, the pressure in the eye. And even if we damage the eye, it can grow back. So that's going to be a gene therapy for glaucoma patients if it works. Eventually you could imagine that we could treat ourselves with a cocktail of 3 genes that resets the body. But even though I could go to my lab today and treat myself, I wouldn't do it. It's too dangerous. People would say it's unethical, and I wouldn't do it. Now, in 20 years when we have more idea of its safety, then it's going to be different. I'll be 70 years old, and the risk reward will be very different.
Yeah, I get you. It makes perfect sense. I don't want to take more of your time, but if you have anything you want to say about the latest updates of your research, please do.
Yeah, well, there are a few things. One is that someone recently discovered that oleic acid, which is monounsaturated free fatty acid, which is produced when we're hungry by breakdown of fat, it activates SIRT1 exactly at the molecular level how resveratrol works.
Interesting.
And so we made a mouse and cells that SIRT1 cannot be activated. And we know that resveratrol doesn't work in those cells and in that mouse. And then a lab recently showed that this oleic acid doesn't work in those cells as well, which is cool. It means that resveratrol from stressed plants is mimicking fasting, but it's also mimicking olive oil and avocados that also have this oleic acid. So I'm increasingly eating olive oil, walnuts, and avocados that have this compound. And actually, it's very potent. I think it's about 10 times more potent than resveratrol, maybe 100 actually.
Interesting. Is it present in flax oil? I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure either. You should check.
I will definitely do. I'll definitely do. I don't take olive oil because it raises the blood sugar. So if I eat olive oil, I can feel the blood sugar spike. I became so sensitive to this, so I'm careful what I eat.
Yep, you have 20% are MUFAs, monounsaturated fatty acids, and it's mainly oleic acid.
And
so
flax?
You're getting flax has oleic acid quite a lot.
That's beautiful. Definitely a better choice for me.
Yeah. Well, so I think this is a good explanation for why these foods are found in populations that are healthier and why these foods are healthy, because no one knew why these oils are so healthy, and now we have a good explanation. So that's one thing that you should know. The other is we published a paper with my Australian team. Lindsay Wu led this again down in Sydney, and the paper came out yesterday in Cell Reports, and it's a paper that shows that fertility can be reversed in mice. Infertility can be reversed. So we've got old mice that are 16 months old, like a 50, 60-year-old in our age, that can now have very good-looking eggs and produce healthy offspring. And we traced this to one of the genes we love called SIRT2, one of the sirtuin genes. And if you give NMN to old mice, they become fertile again. So that came out yesterday. You can check that out. It's now available online. I tweeted about it on David A. Sinclair. And then what's the third thing that's interesting? Oh, the reprogramming work, resetting the body's clock. I think that's the biggest discovery that I've made in my career so far. We're revising that paper for one of the big journals, and I'm hoping it'll come out in the next 6 months, hopefully sooner. And that's the beginning of a revolution in aging research. Because what we're talking about mainly today is slowing down aging and reversing little aspects of it. This is talking about truly resetting the clock permanently, if it works.
Permanently.
Well, okay, let me rephrase. So the reset should work one time, right? We do the reset, and if it's true that the epigenome is reset, the clock is reset, then you truly should go back in age, not just looking like you're younger, but actually being younger. Now, of course, you don't stay young forever. You'll still age again. But the idea would be that you can reset the body every 5-10 years, or in a mouse every 5 months, and keep doing it. So we have succeeded in resetting the eye of a mouse completely once. Now, we don't know if you can do it twice, so you can do it 100 times. That's what we're working on. So the information in the DNA is still there, but we just tell the cell how to read it correctly. Like bringing in a new pianist who was making mistakes on the piano, we can now get a new pianist, and now the cell will play the beautiful music again and turn on the right genes at the right time.
Yeah, correct. Dr. Sinclair, I can't take more of your time. This is such a great honor to be speaking to you.
Well, thanks, Mohammed. It's great to talk to you.
All right, dear. So honored, and thank you so much for your time.
All right. Bye, Mohammed. See you.
You too. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.